I'm Olivia, 35, living in Austin, Texas, a place that's full of ambition like me and where dreams are built brick by brick. I wasn't born into wealth or privilege, but I've always worked hard for everything I've got. When I met Ethan, I was still figuring things out. He was struggling, barely making ends meet, his dreams always just out of reach. But something about him grabbed me. Maybe it was his determination or that fire in his eyes that said, "I'm going to make it." I didn't hesitate. I believed in him with everything I had. In the early days, we were two people trying to climb a mountain. I worked multiple jobs, stayed up late with him, helping him perfect his business plans. He would talk for hours about what we could have, what we would have once everything came together. And I believed it. I believed in him so completely that I put my own dreams on hold. I gave up chances at promotions, at a life I wanted for myself, to support him. After all, it was supposed to be us, together. Ethan's rise was like something out of a story. The man who couldn't even afford dinner one week suddenly had high-profile clients and lucrative deals rolling in. He built his empire slowly but surely, and with every win he promised me more. "Soon we'll be free," he'd say. "We'll live the life we've always dreamed of." And I believed him. I had to. But something began to change as he climbed higher. The man I once saw as my partner in everything, my equal, started to turn into someone else. He became more distant, more absorbed in his own success. The phone calls that used to be about us started to be about him. The dinners we once shared became solo affairs where he was glued to his laptop, barely noticing me across the table. I was still there, helping, supporting, but it felt like I was slipping further and further away. I began to doubt myself. Was I the one holding him back? I told myself I wasn't, but deep down I started to wonder. After all, he had promised we would do it together. Where had that promise gone? When did his dreams become the only ones that mattered? And then I found the truth. One night, after a long day of meetings and calls, I overheard Ethan talking to Matthew, a competitor, someone I had heard him speak ill of in the past. It was late and I should have been asleep, but something nagged at me. I walked into the living room, unnoticed at first, and caught the tail end of their conversation. Ethan was selling me out, selling everything I'd helped him build. He was going to throw me under the bus in exchange for a deal that would secure his future. I didn't hear all of it, but the words that I was expendable, just a tool, stuck in my mind like a knife. How could he? How could the man I gave everything for, the man who promised me we'd reach the top together, do this to me? I stood there in shock, listening to the sound of my world cracking. My heart pounded. How had I not seen this? How had I trusted him, given him everything, only for him to turn on me when it mattered most? The betrayal was too much. It was one thing to lose a dream, but this felt like losing myself. The next day I confronted him. The words that came out of my mouth were not what I expected, but they were the truth. I asked him, demanded to know if this was the man he had become. And Ethan looked at me with cold eyes as if he had been waiting for me to catch on. He didn't deny it. He justified it. He said he was doing what was necessary to win. My support had gotten him this far, but now it was time for him to go further. I stood there, crushed. I thought of all the nights I had stayed up late, worked extra hours, put my life on hold for him. And this was how it ended? With a man I hardly recognized, a man who valued power more than the partnership we had built? I couldn't stay. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when I knew the truth. So I left. It wasn't easy, leaving behind the life I had worked so hard for, the home we had built. But it was necessary. I was broken, but I wasn't defeated. Now, months later, here I am, rebuilding my life. It's not easy, but I'm doing it. I'm starting over, proving to myself that I can stand on my own without Ethan. He sold me out for power, but I'm not going to let that be the end of my story. I gave him everything. But in the end, I found myself. I remember the nights when I'd work late into the morning, staring at my computer screen while Ethan slept peacefully beside me. He was always there, just a few feet away, but somehow so far. I'd help him with his presentations, pouring hours into perfecting his pitches, his business plans, his dreams. I didn't mind the long nights. I believed in him, believed in us. Each sacrifice, each missed family gathering was worth it, because Ethan always promised it would pay off. There were times I was offered promotions, opportunities to climb in my own career, but I let them go. I put my career on hold for him, thinking that someday we would both reach the top. I thought if I could just help him get there, it would be our success. And Ethan would tell me, once we're there, it's all ours. A life of freedom, luxury, everything we've worked for. He said we would enjoy it together. No regrets. His voice was always so convincing, so certain. I never questioned it. How could I? I had given everything for him, for us. But as his success grew, so did the distance between us. It was subtle at first. A few late nights at the office, a few too many business dinners. I thought nothing of it. I was still helping, still supporting him with everything I had. But then it started to change. Ethan, once so loving and attentive, became distant. He'd come home late, eyes glued to his phone, always working. The moments we once shared, the quiet dinners and stolen glances, began to disappear. Instead, he was consumed with his next deal, his next promotion. He was no longer the man I had helped build, and I couldn't understand why. I felt myself slipping away, becoming a shadow in my own life. Ethan's dreams had become his obsession, and I was no longer in the picture, not in the way I used to be. I had always thought that when we made it, we'd be equals, partners in everything. But now, I was watching him soar while I stayed grounded, holding on to a vision of something that was slipping through my fingers. I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. The signs were there, though I didn't want to see them. Ethan, the man who had once been driven by passion and shared dreams, was now fueled by something darker, something insatiable. The deals that once seemed to carry meaning were now just transactions. He began cutting corners, taking risks that once would have been unthinkable. I watched him step over people he had once considered allies, betraying colleagues who had helped him rise. It wasn't just business anymore. It was a hunger for more success, more power. And with each step, he pulled further away from me. I tried to reach him, tried to remind him of everything we had built together. But the more I reached out, the more distant he became. It was as though I was becoming irrelevant, like a faded photograph in a dusty frame. The man I had supported so fiercely was no longer the person I recognized. His words, once filled with dreams of a shared future, now only spoke of his next move, his next step up. And I wasn't part of it anymore. One evening I came home early. The house was quiet, the air thick with tension, but I didn't know why. Ethan's voice echoed from the living room, so I crept closer, thinking maybe he was on the phone. But as I rounded the corner, I froze. Ethan was speaking to someone I knew, Matthew, his business rival. They were sitting in the living room, and their voices were low but unmistakable. Ethan was talking about me. I stood there, hidden in the shadows, unable to move as I heard him say things that tore my heart apart. He spoke coldly, like he was discussing a mere object. I can't do it without her, but once I've got the deal, I won't need her anymore. She's a tool, a stepping stone. She'll understand, Ethan said, his voice devoid of any emotion. I felt the blood drain from my face. Was that how he saw me now? After everything I had done for him, after everything I had given up for his success, he was ready to discard me when it no longer suited him? He wasn't talking about a partner, a woman he loved. He was talking about using me, manipulating me, throwing me away when he had gotten what he wanted. My world came crashing down. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a violation of everything I had believed in. Everything we had built together meant nothing to him. I wasn't a partner in his eyes. I was a pawn. I couldn't stay hidden any longer. My legs moved on their own, and before I knew it, I was standing in the doorway staring at Ethan. His face drained of color when he saw me. "Olivia," he started, but I could already see the guilt in his eyes. The truth was written on his face, and there was no denying it now. "How long?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How long have you been planning this?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably, running his hand through his hair. He didn't look surprised, didn't try to justify himself. He knew he had been caught. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said quietly. "But you have to understand. I need this. I need more. Power. Control. Success. It's bigger than us now." I couldn't speak. My chest was tight with a mix of betrayal and heartbreak. He was admitting it, admitting he didn't care about us anymore. All the sacrifices I had made, the years I had spent building him up, had been nothing more than stepping stones for him to climb higher. The love I had given him meant nothing. And me? I managed to say, the words feeling like daggers in my throat. What was I to you? Just a way to get ahead? Just something to be tossed aside once you didn't need me? Ethan's gaze faltered. Olivia, No, I cut him off, shaking my head. You don't get to do this. You don't get to use me and then turn around and justify it. You've made your choice. He stood up, taking a step toward me, but I backed away. You should be proud of me, he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. Look at what I've accomplished. Look at where we are. It's all for us. Even if it cost this. He gestured vaguely between us. You'll see. One day you'll understand. But I did understand. I understood everything. Ethan didn't want me. He wanted power. And he was willing to lose everything, us, to get it. I looked at him one last time, that man who once meant everything to me, and I realized that the person I had loved was long gone. I turned and walked out the door, the weight of his betrayal heavy on my shoulders. And just like that, I was done. I stood there in the empty room, staring at the boxes that contained the life I had built with Ethan, the life I had sacrificed everything for. The clothes I once wore with pride, the books we collected together, the photographs that used to remind me of happy moments now felt like relics from a life that never truly belonged to me. Everything I had given up, my career, my friends, my dreams, had been for him. For us. But now, standing here, I saw it all so clearly. It wasn't for us. It was for him. My heart ached as I folded clothes into the box, each piece a reminder of the years I had spent supporting him, of the promises he made that now rang hollow in my ears. How many times had I put my life on hold, thinking it would be worth it in the end? How many nights had I stayed up, working to help him get ahead, while my own goals and aspirations faded into the background? All of it for nothing. For a man who never truly valued me, who would sell me out in a heartbeat the moment it suited him. I felt a wave of anger rise in my chest. But more than that, I felt something else, something I hadn't felt in years, clarity. I couldn't stay here any longer. I couldn't continue to live in this house, in this life, where I had become nothing more than a pawn in Ethan's game. I had given him everything. Now I had nothing left to give. As I packed the last of my things, I heard footsteps behind me. Ethan's voice followed. Olivia, wait. I froze. My heart dropped, and for a second I wondered if I should turn around, if I should listen to him. But then I remembered everything. All the years I had spent believing in him, in us, and all the ways he had betrayed me. I didn't look back as he stepped into the room. His voice was soft, almost pleading, but I couldn't trust it anymore. Don't go, he said. I'm sorry. I'll fix this. I swear. I can change. Just stay with me. We can make it work. His words were like poison, sweet on the surface but deadly beneath. I had heard them too many times before, promises of change, of better days ahead, but they had always been empty. He had never changed. And now he was asking me to believe him again. You're not sorry, Ethan, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. You're just scared. Scared of losing everything you've worked for. And you want me to stay because I'm the last thing holding you up. Not because you love me. Not because you care. He stepped closer, his hands outstretched as if he could reach into my chest and make me feel what he wanted me to feel. That's not true. I love you. I need you. No, I said firmly, shaking my head. You don't. You need me to stay so you can keep climbing, so you can protect what you've built. But I'm not your tool anymore. I'm not going to be used to fill your empty space, Ethan. Not anymore. I took a deep breath, looking at the man I once loved and now barely recognized. There was a time when I would have believed him. When I would have given him another chance, hoping he'd change. But now I saw it. I saw him for what he really was. Someone who would discard anyone, even me, to get ahead. I closed the box with a soft click, the sound final. Goodbye, Ethan. I hope you get everything you've ever wanted. I walked toward the door, each step heavier than the last, but each one also bringing me closer to something I hadn't had in a long time, freedom. Ethan's voice called after me, desperation in his tone. Olivia, please. Don't leave me. I didn't stop. I reached for the door handle, took one last look at the life we had built, and walked out. No more looking back. No more hoping things would change. As I stepped out into the world, the weight of the years I had spent supporting him, the years I had lost, slowly started to lift. There was pain, yes, but there was also strength. Strength I hadn't known I had. I was finally free. And this time I wasn't walking away from love. I was walking toward myself. The first few weeks after I left were a blur. My heart was still heavy, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. I didn't waste any time wallowing in the loss. I couldn't afford to. Ethan's betrayal had stripped away the person I had once been, but it had also given me something priceless, a chance to rebuild. I threw myself into work, into something just for me. I started my own business, using everything I had learned while helping Ethan build his empire. It wasn't easy. There were days when doubt crept in, when I wondered if I was just pretending to be strong. But every time I thought of Ethan, of the way he had turned his back on me, I remembered why I had to do this. I was no longer just his partner, I was my own person. And I was going to make it. It wasn't long before I started to see success. Small wins at first, new clients, positive feedback. But with each step forward I felt stronger. I began to rediscover the woman I had once been, the woman I had forgotten while I was so busy supporting someone else's dreams. And then I found something. It was an old email buried deep in Ethan's inbox, marked with a string of codes I recognized, codes I had helped him set up in the past. I opened it and began to read. My hands trembled as I absorbed the information. Ethan had been involved in illegal activities, fraud, embezzlement, manipulation. Everything he had done to climb to the top had been built on lies. He had been deceiving clients, bribing officials, falsifying records. And all of it was right there in front of me. The anger I had been suppressing flared up again, but this time it was different. This time I wasn't going to stay silent. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I contacted a journalist I knew and leaked the information to the press. It wasn't just a story, it was a warning. A message to Ethan that his reign of manipulation was over. But I didn't stop there. I sent the details to Matthew, his competitor, knowing that Ethan had wronged him too. I wanted him to feel the weight of his own actions, to understand that his empire wasn't as untouchable as he thought. I watched as everything Ethan had worked for began to crumble. His phone started ringing with angry calls, his clients dropped him one by one, and soon his name was plastered across every headline for all the wrong reasons. His reputation, built on lies, shattered in a matter of days. People who had once admired him turned their backs, and his wealth, his power, all of it, slipped through his fingers. But me? I didn't need to watch it happen. I didn't need to gloat or seek revenge in a way that would satisfy my ego. Watching Ethan fall from grace was enough. I had already won. I was standing tall again, building something real and lasting, while he was left to pick up the pieces of a life he had destroyed on his own. His empire, once seemingly unbreakable, crumbled under the weight of his deceit. As I looked out from my office window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, I realized something. I had finally reclaimed my life. Ethan might have taken everything from me once, but I was taking it all back. And this time it was mine to keep. I sat in my office, the same space I had once shared with Ethan, but now it was mine alone. An embodiment of everything I had worked for, everything I had fought to rebuild. The city stretched out before me, its lights a reminder of how far I had come. I thought back on everything. The years I had spent supporting Ethan, the dreams I had abandoned, and the way my heart had shattered when I realized how little I meant to him. I had been broken, but in the pieces I found something stronger. I found my own resilience. I had learned the hard way that power and success mean nothing when they're built on lies. Ethan had sought power at any cost, stepping on anyone who stood in his way, and in the end he had nothing to show for it. But me? I had something real. I had built my life on honesty, integrity, and my own strength. I wasn't a pawn in anyone's game anymore. My happiness was in my hands now, and I knew that no man's promises, no matter how sweet, could ever take that away again. The life I had now was mine. I had created it, brick by brick, without anyone else's help. I had friends who respected me, colleagues who admired me, and the freedom to live on my own terms. The days of waiting for someone else to define my future were over. I was in control. Finally, I could breathe again. But as I sat there, my phone buzzed on the desk. I picked it up, and there it was, Ethan's name flashing on the screen. My stomach twisted, a brief reminder of everything I had endured. He had sent a message. It was short, desperate. He apologized for everything, begged for another chance, for forgiveness, hoping we could start over. I stared at it, the words sinking in. For a moment I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. I stared at the screen for a long time. But then, I did something I never would have imagined I could do a year ago. I deleted the message. Without hesitation. A quiet smile tugged at my lips. I wasn't the same person I was when I first left him. I had let go. And I knew deep down that I was better off without him. This time, the only person I needed was me.